my channel. I just started knitting and crochet about a year ago. It was actually, looking back, December 28th was when I first started knitting. I got this little wooble as a Christmas present as a kit, which came with the yarn and the crochet. I've very much gotten into knitting and crochet since that first project 1 year ago. As a beginner fiber artist, someone who works full-time, I also have other hobbies like rock climbing. I thought it would be nice to do a haul of everything that I've made this year. I am a bit slower at knitting and crocheting because I am new. This is my first year doing this, so I'm hoping that I get faster as time goes on, but I'm also not too worried about it because I'm doing this for enjoyment, to relax. I don't think it's that much of an issue if I do wind up staying slow. I can't help but get ahead of myself. There's so many projects that I want to do, so I'm hoping to get a little bit faster so that way I have more time to actually get everything done that I want to, which I know I'll never be able to make everything, but that is the goal. So we'll start with the very first thing that I made, this guy. His name is Pierre the Penguin. That's the wooble's official name. I call him Pierre because he turned out just a little bit funky. That he was my first ever crochet project, so I think it's understandable. His nose is a little wonky and his wings don't align super evenly, but it was a super easy pattern to follow. They have videos walking you through step by step on how to do everything. They have a couple different options for stitching the eyes on versus doing little attachment eye baubles. Because I have cats and I knew it was a possibility that they would try to play with it, I didn't want to do the little plastic attachments because I figured that was more of a risk for those popping off and being a choking hazard. So this is Pierre. It took me 2 days to make him, which was, I'd say, very quick. It wasn't actually 2 full days of crocheting. It was more a couple hours each day. So it's a very quick, easy project, and I had a lot of fun with it. I very quickly was excited to do more crocheting. It is very attentive. I had to be looking at the pattern and counting with the little stitch markers and moving them around the whole time. So after doing this, I was thinking have something where I could just mindlessly go and I wouldn't have to worry so much about keeping track. So the next thing that I made were 2 baby blankets. The first one was just single crochet with that 4mm hook that I got from the Woobles kit, so I only had to buy the yarn for that one. I made baby blankets for my cats. I don't have any children, but cats love blankets, so I thought that would be a fun, easy, mindless project. I don't have it with me because, as it, spoiler alert, wound up, I got a rash from these baby blankets once I had completed them and actually tried sleeping with it to scent them for my cat. I decided they wouldn't be staying in my home. I gave them to a local cat foster so that way some kitties would still be able to get to use them. But I'll show some photos on the screen while I talk about it. The first one was just single crochet with a 4mm hook. I followed instructions from this YouTube video that I'll link down below. That one was meant for a much bigger, like, throw blanket, but I figured the same principle still applied if I just used a yarn and hook that were appropriate for what I had. So yeah, I just made it to the general size that I wanted to. I didn't follow like the stitch count exactly. It was just the instructions for how to like do the foundation chain and then doing the turning and attaching new yarn and stuff like that. And then once I created that full blanket, I kind of wanted something to round out the edges, make it look a little bit neater. So I found a different video, which I will also link. That one was the border, and it's just a single crochet border made in that same yarn. It's a Bernat Baby Sport yarn in the colorway blue. And then once I finished that one, I was very happy about it, but I wanted to make a second baby blanket. This was before I knew that I was allergic, because that one still had to go in the wash before I could try to scent it. So I started on my second baby blanket, and it was alternating single and double crochet because I wanted to have a nicer fabric for the center of the blanket. And about halfway through that one is when I realized that I was allergic to something in the yarn, or maybe the dye. I don't know exactly. I decided to finish it up anyway because I was already at least halfway through that project, and I had already ordered additional yarn from that same brand. I did the Bernat Softy Baby in the baby denim colorway. It's I think a self-striping yarn, but that's what I did for the borders. I did that same single crochet border around the edges, just in that one yarn. I went around in the circles, and it came out very cute in my opinion. I liked how it looked a lot. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to stay in my home. After that, I felt about ready to get into wearables, so I was just searching beginner-friendly crochet patterns, and I found the Dove Pullover by Brianna K Designs. I didn't use like the first recommended yarn for that one, and I can actually show you how it came out. I used the Lion brand Kobu, which was one of the alternatives that she recommended. So this is how it came out. I did do a pattern swatch for this. So this was the first like non-baby yarn that I got. I got the Lion brand Kobu in the colorway Olive, and it's a very drapey fabric. I really like how the stitches look. I would strongly recommend this pattern. She has a free version available on her website with ads that you can scroll through, and she's also got a video walkthrough on YouTube, which was very helpful, especially as a beginner, to be able to follow along with. I did do a gauge swatch, and then I washed and dried it because I wanted to be able to wash and dry this just because of my laundry habits and lifestyle. I very much prefer being able to have all of my clothes machine washable and machine dryable. I'm a bit more willing to hang dry clothes if that's something that needs to happen, but being machine washable is pretty non-negotiable. I'm not going to be hand washing anything. So basically all of my gauge swatches go into the washer, and I'm using that to figure out how my clothes are going to turn out once I finish making them and they go through the wash. In terms of texture, if it's still going to be a material that I like even after it gets washed, and what the shrinkage in each direction is going to be. So since I was doing that, I had to wait very impatiently for after I made that gauge swatch to get it washed and dried. I did it 2 times just to be sure, because sometimes in the first couple washes and dries there'll be like additional shrinkage, and then from there it's pretty steady. So I did some calculations based off of the pattern, and I actually thought it was going to shrink even more than it wound up doing. It was crocheted from one end to the other, so you start on one sleeve and you work your way all the way across, and it's in one flat piece that you wind up seaming together. So I think it was supposed to shrink in terms of the row height, like in terms of the number of rows. They were supposed to be more bunched together, so my sleeves wound up a little longer because the actual finished project wound up shrinking less than I was expecting it to after going through the wash and dryer. I don't know if it's because of the seaming that it stabilized that length of it a bit more, but it's not any longer on the side that has the seam than on the side that doesn't have the seam, so I'm still not exactly sure why that turned out so differently. But I still love it. I still wear it. It's my first crochet project that I completed. It's the first one that I started that's actually wearable. I actually started another one while I was working on this one because this was such a long project. I wanted to have another shorter one on the go as well. It is very repetitive because it's all that one stitch throughout the whole thing, and it's worked in one flat piece, which makes it, I think, very beginner friendly. She gave you a lot of step-by-steps on how to do, and she showed the stitches very clearly on how to do the ribbing or faux ribbing. It's not actual ribbing. I think actual ribbing has to be knit. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't actually know. That's just the impression I think I've gotten from hearing people talk about it. The length of it is actually a lot closer to what I was expecting. So I'm happy with how that fits. The neckline does gape a little bit. I am kind of thinking about weaving some elastic into it to hold it in together because it is a little bit wider of a neck than I had expected when I was making it. I don't know if that's because my gauge was a little bit off and I had to do like calculations to get around that, and that wound up affecting the size of the neck hole, or if it's maybe just a characteristic of the yarn that I use, that it has less elasticity in it because it's a cotton base, so it might not have as much retention to really pull it in. But yeah, I absolutely love this piece. It's super soft, super cozy. I love the drape. It does have a couple little imperfections if you were to look closely. I didn't do the best at switching the yarn over when I went into a new ball. And then I mentioned another project that I worked on. I started it after I started that sweater, but I wound up finishing it before I finished the sweater because it's just such a small, quick project. It's called the Equinox Top by Nina Floyd. She has a free pattern available. The free version is made to measure, so ideally you should be able to make it to fit you perfectly. Because of my own skill issues, this does not fit me very well, but that is no problem with the pattern. She definitely tells you that you need to make the back a little bit shorter than you actually measure, so that way you have room for the laces to actually show and not be fully cinched together like this. It also is a cotton material. I didn't use the yarn recommended because I still had stuff left over from the sweater. I accidentally ordered double the amount that I needed, but it was pretty cheap. So I figured I liked the yarn, I liked the color, I was gonna just keep it and try to find something else to use it for. And then for the material on the cups, she actually recommends a much larger hook and gauge in general, but because it's crochet and you can see like the little gaps between, and it's such a tiny little top, I wanted to be able to wear it without a bra. And so to do that, I wanted the material to be much thicker. I was wary if it was still a little see-through after making it, I might have to try to sew a lining in. So I did it a few times over, making that first cup, just trying to see what gauge I would be happy with. I wound up settling on, for this yarn, I used a 3mm hook because I wanted very small stitches to have a much more dense material for the cup coverage. And then I had been planning on switching up to a bigger hook to make the lace a little bit bigger, like how it was intended in the pattern. But I wasn't quite sure on how to like alternate the picking up stitches and do the math on that. So I just wound up continuing on with that same hook size. And I actually really like how the lace detail came out on this. I don't know if you can see, but I find it a really pretty pattern, and I actually surprisingly had a lot of fun doing that lace crochet design. It wasn't difficult. It was very clear on the site as to how to do it, and because it's so repetitive, you're able to like get going and just keep going back and forth on that same routine, and I didn't have to like keep checking back at my notes. There is a bit of math involved in the made to measure one. She does have paid versions available if you want to do small, medium, and large. The only thing is these straps that she designed are these very tiny little thin straps, and they definitely dig into my skin, so I get a bit of irritation just because I have to tighten it so tight to get it to stay up, because I wound up, even though it was made to measure, I made it a little bit too long for my body, so it wound up, I have it laced basically all the way so the sides are meeting, so you can't even see that cute little lace-up detail, and even then it's still like my strands are super long, and it's still a little big, so it's mostly all the weight is sitting on these straps rather than being secured in the back. And because of how loose it was, and it's honestly very tricky to try to lace it up on yourself, I had my husband do it for me a time or two, but even then it's very hard because again, it was too big for me to lace it up to actually fit on me properly. So I wound up getting a little cute stitch marker because I figured why not have like a little decorative element if I need something to cinch them together. So when I do wear this, I use this little clip and I hook it through both strands right behind my neck, kind of like a halter top. So it fits. It just is a little bit more of a risque piece. So I have to be feeling on one of my more confident days if I do want to wear it out. And it also is not just the most comfortable to wear because again of those really thin straps. So while I love the look of it, I think it's super cute. I think maybe doing like some elastic or a stretchier fabric, so where it can like stretch and go over your head, might be useful. Doing thicker straps. I can't remember what the other options were. I think she had another option for doing like a halter top rather than a lace up style, so that might be better if you were to make this. But once I finished that one, I still had more yarn left over of that Lion Brand Kobu, so I was thinking, what else can I make? We were coming up on a cruise that we were going to take with my in-laws, so I thought making a little swimsuit cover-up could be fun. I started working on it. I was following the Midi Dress Beach cover-up pattern by Sarah Rivera. That's available on Ravelry. It's a free pattern. It's basically just like a PDF with the instructions for how she made hers. I think the one that she has such beautiful drape, and it just looks so simple but gorgeous, the way that she did it. I was thinking it'd be really cute to have that in this nice cotton yarn, cotton-based yarn, because it's very light and summery and drapey. So I started on it. You can tell I did not get too far. I was more excited about making the tank top and making the sweater, so I did get some time in on this, but it wound up getting close to the cruise, and I wasn't anywhere close to being done with it, and I just kind of ran out of passion for making it. So I've got like probably about a foot of just netted material in a circle. It is a bit interesting to do the crochet kind of in the round. I was very intrigued by the idea of doing it, and I'd started seeing some more videos of like knitting in the round, and that seemed like a cool idea, but I only knew how to do crochet, so I feel like it was a decent start. But yeah, this is on indefinite pause. I think maybe someday I'll come back to it. Maybe I'll just come back and try to use the yarn for something else. But we'll see where this goes. The next item that I made, I mentioned I had been getting interested in doing knitting. I figured those baby blankets were a good start for doing crochet projects. I would do a knitted blanket for learning how to knit. I just got this cheap kit that had a variety of sizes that I could do, and I found the Arctic Throw by Abby Adams. The kit that I got actually wound up not having a needle big enough for what she recommended, so I used the biggest needle it had. It was the 8mm needles, and then I got the Lion Brand Cover Story Woods colorway yarn, and I basically learned how to do knit and purl stitches from that video. I definitely made a lot of mistakes. I would not necessarily recommend this yarn for your very first knit project because it does make it incredibly difficult to read your stitches. So it was very hard for me to tell if I was doing things correctly or not, and so I was very much like counting as I went through, because it had an alternating pattern of doing knit and purls. I don't know technically what that stitch is called to do knit, purl, and then the way it switched on the other side. But I think it created this beautiful texture. The color of the yarn, because it automatically like shifts the colors pretty frequently, it wound up coming out very camo looking, which wasn't exactly what I was going for. I do think it has a pretty nice like color scheme. I just don't know that the camo style is exactly what I was going for, but it does hide all of my mistakes incredibly. So while it is a lot harder to read your stitches, it is also very forgiving in that you're gonna look at this blanket and you're not gonna be able to see, oh, she messed up the knit purl pattern in one spot right here or there. So I wound up doing that whole ball of yarn, which made, I think, a pretty nice throw blanket. I cast on, I did the longer side on my initial cast on because I wanted to have the option, if I decided the blanket was too small, to add on another ball of yarn of this same, it's basically one giant ball, which made it not super portable to work on, but it was very nice to not have to do yarn changes or ball changes throughout the project. I could just knit and go and not have to worry about it. But yeah, I was very done with working on this blanket by the time I got through that whole ball of yarn, and as I kind of was expecting, I did just want to cast off at that point. I didn't want to tie on a whole new ball of yarn and duplicate this whole time that I had spent working on it. So while I was working on this, I was very much getting used to the motions of doing knits, doing purls, and so it's a very tedious, mindless thing, which is great for when you're sitting down and you're like watching TV or you're listening to an audiobook or something. But since we were going on that cruise, I started this probably a little bit before we left for that cruise. I thought having a smaller, more portable project to take with me while we were there, I could get some knitting in. And I was really excited at doing that. So I found a pattern, the Vanilla Socks on Magic Loop by Crazy Socks Lady Designs. I did use this yarn that I found at Joann's because it was closing down. My friend and I went, and we basically, the store was really cleared out, so there were limited options, but there was this one yarn that I actually kind of fell in love with. The tag fell off, or I couldn't find it, but I wound up finding that this yarn is the Big Twist Baby Bunny yarn in the color Nap Time Stripe. I just loved the texture of it. It's so soft, and it's absolutely gorgeous, the colors, how they look together. I didn't know how it was going to turn out knitting it into a sock, but I think I've learned it is a self-striping yarn is what that's called. So when I knit it into a sock, this is how it wound up coming out. So I started, and then as I was going, it just automatically changed colors, and it created stripes of that color at the time. It wasn't that marbled look that I got from the Lion Brand cover story. So I think it's maybe just because it's a smaller material that when I was working on it, it created those stripes like that. If you were to do it in a much longer piece like a blanket, it would probably come out looking more marbled like that. I looked at the material of this yarn, and it is, I think, polyester and rayon, which I was thinking should be a good enough material for a sock. I think it has, like, I thought it had a little bit of stretch to it. I don't know if that actually is the best sock blend, because it really, when I pull on it, it does not actually have any stretch. I think I was just a little bit delusional about it. It's a very stiff fiber. It does not have much stretch to it, so it was actually really slippery and tough on my needles. I was working on a very small needle size. I don't know exactly what size needles I did use. I think it was probably my smallest needles in my kit, the 3mm ones. And I didn't do a gauge swatch because the whole sock is so small. I figured it's not really recommended to do that, but I found out during the process of making the sock that one, I knit continental style, which is just what that first video, the Arctic Throw, taught. And so that's why I was doing that. And I don't know if I misunderstood the instructions or if that's just how she does her purls in that video, but I was purling through the back loop. I've not looked back at the video to see if that's actually something she does or if I just didn't realize what I was doing and that's what wound up happening. But it is a very non-stretchy material, which is, I think most people already know, not the best for a sock. So I think I knit it to the right general size, but it does not fit on my foot at all. It is like incredibly loose up here around my ankles, and then I like can barely squeeze my foot in here, and it is not comfortable. And by the time I was done with the sock, I was pretty ready to be over it. I was not exactly looking forward to making the second sock, and I think the fact that it fit so poorly was an excuse for me to say, hey, I think I'm done with this. I'm gonna move on to my next project. While I say that I was ready to move on from the sock onto my next thing, I think it taught me a lot of valuable skills, such as, so I did it on Magic Loop, which is a very tedious way to knit in the round. I've now since learned that I prefer traveling loop over Magic Loop. I just think it makes more sense to my brain and it's more fun. I don't know if she has a version of the pattern that's available with traveling loop. She might, but I think it's a little bit less complicated knitting with traveling loop versus magic loop. It's just a little bit less finicky. I kept getting really bad laddering in between here. I don't know if it's extra bad because of me knitting through the back loop, if that made a difference. Also potentially with the tightness of the material, having it be less stretchy, I don't know if that made a difference. I think my stitch work got a lot neater. I had to redo this section right here probably like 5 times before I was happy enough with how this ribbing section looked and I began to move on to the rest of it. The ribbing has like a little bit of stretch to it, I think because it is ribbing and so it's the nature of the stitch that it has some stretch. But as soon as I got to that stockinette stitch through the mane of the sock, it has lost a good bit of any elasticity. So it can kind of pull, but it's just not the comfiest material. But I got a lot of practice with like doing increases and decreases, and there's a section on the heel where you have to pick stitches up. So I think I gained a lot of practice in different skills that I would need moving on to my next project, but I still was not the happiest with how the sock turned out. So I think it was a great small little project to do to get some familiarity with it. And I do still love the yarn, so I might come back to it. I don't think I would reknit the same socks with this yarn. So I'm thinking I might want to hold it together with another yarn and like work it into a t-shirt or something like that. I'm not still exactly sure what I'm planning to do with this one moving forward. And then after I finished this, I had already had an idea of a whole bunch of different projects that I wanted to do. So before jumping right in, I had to pause and consider what yarns I already had in my stash from going through Joann's on their closing out sale, because I'd really rather not have a huge yarn stash. If I can help it, I prefer just buying a yarn with an idea or a project in mind. I don't like having a lot of clutter around the house. So if I have something I'm planning to do with it, I'm happy to buy the yarn, but I don't really want to just like go out to yarn shops and buy a bunch of yarn and just have a lot that I'm keeping around, because that would stress me out. I had a cotton merino blend, which I've been interested to try. It's a superwash merino, so I should be able to toss that in the wash. I think it's not recommended to try it. I thought would be perfect to do the No Frills sweater by Petite Knit. I still have this one on the needles. It's in process. I've been having so much fun making this. It's probably my favorite piece that I've made so far, and it's not even done yet. We'll see if that holds up once it's done, if it fits how I'm hoping that it fits. But I'm absolutely obsessed at this point. I did the ribbing and I'm just split for the sleeves. So I'm only part of the way through this, but I actually only cast this on this month. So I'm pretty proud with the progress that I've made on it. I have discovered, because it is a black fabric, my cat's fur shows up really clearly on here, so it's maybe not the best color choice for me and my lifestyle, but you know what, I think I've given in to the cat fur. It's just an inevitable part of my life. I'm never going to escape from it. But yeah, I really like the design of this pattern. I will say, I think it's an intermediate. It's the No Frills by Petite Knit. I'm using the Lucky brand cotton wool blend. I started using this wool and I understand now. I had mostly been knitting with cotton or plant fibers, and as soon as I cast this on and I started working with it, the amount of stretch and elasticity in the yarn from having that superwash merino in here made it feel like it was flying off of my needles. And I had heard people mention that projects were flying off of their needles before, and I hadn't truly understood what they were saying until I started on this project. So the superwash merino is definitely something I'm interested in using a little bit more of as time goes on. And I'm hoping that the cotton adds a little bit of breathability to it and some drape. So I did a patch test on this one, and I wound up knitting a little tight compared to petite knit. I think it was only a difference of 1 stitch. I can't remember if it was in the row length or in the height. I don't know the exact terminology, but I was only very slightly off, very slightly tight. I figured it was close enough. I was kind of in between the size small and size medium. So with me knitting a bit tight, I figured I should probably be knitting a size medium, but looking at the photos on the pattern site, I figured I wanted to actually knit like almost a size down to have it be a slightly tighter fit on me. I didn't want it to be so big with so much positive ease. So I'm knitting a size small and we'll see how it turns out. It didn't actually change at all in the wash in terms of size. It, I think, should turn out pretty similar in size to the size that it is as I'm knitting it. And so far I did test, it does fit over my head. So I at least have one barrier down. I am playing potentially a game of yarn chicken with this one because it calls for, I should have, I think, at least 1 more ball of yarn for the gauge and yarn that I'm using, but I only had 4 in stash because that was all they had at Joann's when I went to pick up yarn. So I'm hoping I don't have to buy another ball because I am wary of it being a slightly different color and that being visible in the final product. So I'm kind of considering, like, if I do run into that, if I want to just switch to a fully different color and commit to the bit, have like cuffs that are a fun color or something like that, or if I wanted to do like a stripe across the body. So we'll see how that winds up turning out. So far I really like it. I'm gonna switch from working on the body to doing the sleeves in a little bit. I just wanted to reinforce where those armholes are, because I think I care more about having the sleeves be done and then I can crop the body a little bit. I'm happy with wearing a slightly cropped sweater if I wind up coming up a little short on the yarn. So I'm hoping that'll maybe be my savior, that I'm willing to wear a slightly cropped sweater. We will find out as time goes on. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. Strongly recommend it. It is, I believe, an intermediate level pattern. Her instructions are very clear. I find the way that they're written, I did get a little confused with her wording in terms of the like working on the right back versus the right left and the way that we were wrapping around, but I realized I had been imagining working from the bottom up and I needed to remember I was working from the top down. I basically just followed along. I just trusted the instructions, and then eventually it began making sense to me. All of the numbers were very clear in that. I will say I accidentally cast on for a size medium, but I'm just doing the amount of repeats for a size small, and I figured the difference is only 2 stitches, so it shouldn't make too much of a difference in the end product. I'm just having to take that into account for where those extra stitches go. I'm like following where they're placed, where the odd numbers are in the medium size, but I'm applying it to the small size stitch count. I found some videos of what kind of cast-ons and cast-offs you should be doing that were separate from the pattern. I think I did a long tail cast-on for the initial ribbing, which I think worked pretty well. I'm not exactly sure what cast-off I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure that out. I was considering maybe an Italian bind-off, but that seems a little finicky, and I am still very new, so we'll see what I wind up actually going with. Since I have been doing so much knitting, around when I started on that sweater, I also wanted to do a crochet project, just because I do still enjoy crochet. I think just the look of a lot of knit wearables appeal to me a little bit more than the crochet wearables, and living in a warmer climate, I don't want to have like very thick, bulky materials, and knitting tends to give you a slightly thinner fabric. For a blanket, I saw this really cute blanket that someone had done. I don't know the name of it. It was some random video that I had watched, where she did a very like 70s inspired granny square blanket with these big flowers. It was very like warm colors, like pink, purple, white, orange, or like it was more of a cream color than a white even, and it just turned out absolutely gorgeous, that total blanket that she made. So I wanted to make something similar to that. I didn't personally love the style of those like very like cartoonist, almost like SpongeBob style flowers. So I found a pattern online using the Big Twist plush and Bernat. The Big Twist plush for most of the colors, and then just the white is the Bernat baby blanket polyester. I got a lot of these yarns from Joann's, all of the Big Twist plush ones, when they were closing, and they didn't have any white left in a polyester, so I decided I would just wait until I was ready to start making the blanket to just buy a bunch of white yarn to fill it out. So I didn't have a pattern at the time when I was buying it. I think the amounts of yarn I have in my stash are maybe even overkill for the amount of blanket that I want to make, but we'll see as I go along how I like the style and the pattern and wound up bringing it together. I think this is going to be a very long, extended project. It's going to take me a while to get through all of these granny squares. The very first one I made is this one. I had been planning to do orange for the outside and then switch between purple and pink for the inside, the center of the flowers, just because the amounts of yarn that were available in the different colors, and how much yarn it takes when doing the granny square. But when I finished this, I just have to say, it is so flesh colored. It kind of looks like a butthole. I think hi, sorry, that's my cat. He's making an appearance. I have dangling strings waving around, so he's very enticed to play with it. I haven't woven in any of the ends because I'm probably taking this one apart. I don't think I want to continue forward with having the pink in the center of any of these. I think having the orange in the center with the purple flowers looked a little bit nicer. I definitely was a little bit neater with my stitches with my second, so I think this one looks really cute. I'm very happy with how this one turned out. I just haven't gotten around to making any more of these because I've been so in love with working on that sweater. I haven't gotten around to it. You will see when I come back to actually doing it. It's been kind of on pause, but I still am interested in finishing this project. I think it's a lot of fun. It takes me about an hour in total to do the whole square. I'm hoping that gets a little bit faster as time goes on, how to follow the steps. But yeah, I'm definitely having to like check back in every time. And it is, again, that very fluffy yarn. So it is very hard to read your stitches, and reading your stitches is very important when you're doing crochet because you need to count that you're doing the right number, and you need to be stitching into the right ones underneath. So I think it is maybe a bit forgiving in maybe you didn't go in exactly the right spot, but I'm just hoping that I can make the squares even enough, even with the difficulty counting everything. The outer ones, I think because they have these taller stitches, are a little bit easier to count. It's really just when you're going into the center and it's so densely packed, all these single crochets into that first loop, that I really have the most trouble counting on this one. That is everything that I've made in this first year. I hope I maybe gave you some ideas or reassured you in the amount that is actually realistic to make, especially your very first year. It's not perfect by any means, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited to see where else I'll go with all of these projects that I'm working on. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.